In the damp, ancient walls of the friary of San Giovanni Rotondo, something extraordinary was about to be revealed. It was a crisp October afternoon in 1954 when Brother Rafaele made his way toward the cell of Padre Pio to deliver a stack of letters. As he approached the heavy wooden door, he heard a whispering voice emanating from within. He paused, not daring to interrupt what was clearly a moment of profound mystical prayer. But what he heard next would forever alter his understanding of the power of the Rosary. "Look, Lord, how they rise to heaven like perfumed incense," Padre Pio murmured, his voice trembling with an emotion that seemed to vibrate through the very stones of the corridor. "Every Ave Maria is like a rose that rises toward your throne. Oh, every mystery is a light that pierces the darkness of this broken world." Brother Rafaele, unable to contain his curiosity, crept silently toward the slightly ajar door. The sight inside left him breathless. Padre Pio was kneeling before a small, weathered crucifix. His hands, though aged and marked by the mysterious stigmata, gripped the rosary beads with a strength that seemed to defy his physical frailty. His eyes were fixed upward with an expression of absolute wonder, as if he were contemplating a reality invisible to the rest of humanity. Tears rolled down his cheeks, wetting the wool of his habit, and every few moments his lips moved in a silent dialogue, as if he were conversing with a physical presence standing right there in the room. "Death is not the end," the holy friar whispered, his voice catching. "It is only the moment when the prayers of the Rosary accompany us to the other side. I see them, Lord. I see them rising like a golden staircase toward your kingdom." For the next several minutes, Brother Rafaele stood as a witness to something that would mark his soul for the rest of his life. Padre Pio began to describe, in a low, rhythmic cadence, what his spiritual eyes were beholding. He spoke of millions of Ave Marias rising from every corner of the earth, from the deathbeds of the lonely, from the nurseries of children, and from the trenches of war, appearing as brilliant lights that formed luminous paths connecting the celestial realm with the earthly one. He spoke of souls who, at the precise moment of their departure from this world, were not left alone, but were instead escorted by these very prayers into the divine presence. Each rosary prayed with faith, Padre Pio murmured, becomes a rope that God extends to rescue souls from the depths of purgatory. I see them. They are there, waiting for every Ave Maria, as if it were a drop of fresh water to quench their eternal thirst. When Brother Rafaele finally found the courage to enter the room, he found Padre Pio with a face that was literally radiant, though he was visibly exhausted by the sheer intensity of the vision. "Father," the young friar asked timidly, "what have you seen?" The Saint of Pietrelcina looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the firmament, and replied, "My son, if people truly knew what happens when they pray the Rosary, there would not be a single moment of the day when this prayer did not resound throughout the entire earth." This revelation was not a singular event in the life of the mystic. Throughout his decades at the monastery, multiple witnesses documented similar experiences that defied the laws of nature. One such witness was Mrs. Cleonis Morcaldi, a devoted spiritual daughter who frequently visited the friar. She recounted an afternoon when she found him in a deep ecstasy while reciting the beads. His lips moved, but the traditional Latin or Italian words did not come out. Instead, it was as if he were having an intimate conversation with a mother. According to Cleonis, when Padre Pio returned to his normal state, he explained that he had seen the Blessed Virgin Mary herself gathering every Ave Maria as if they were delicate rose petals. She was weaving them into celestial crowns, which she then placed upon the heads of souls who had just arrived in paradise. Every complete rosary, Padre Pio told her, becomes a crown of eternal glory. But the most beautiful part is that these crowns do not only adorn the one who deserves them, they radiate light and grace upon other souls in desperate need. The spiritual weight of these visions was also captured by Dr. Giorgio Festa, the physician who attended to Padre Pio, and who, despite his scientific background, was forced to acknowledge the supernatural. In his meticulous notes from 1956, he wrote about a particular vision the saint described regarding the moment of transition. Padre Pio explained that at the exact instant a person passes away, all the rosaries they prayed during their lifetime manifest as a protective light surrounding them. It is as if every Ave Maria becomes a guardian angel, the saint told the doctor. I saw how these prayers formed a luminous shield that protected the soul from the final temptations of the enemy. They became intercessors before the divine tribunal, presenting the virtues and good works of that soul with an eloquence that no human word could ever match. The doctor was so moved by these accounts that he began to systematically document the mystic's experiences, noting that the rosary was not just a prayer for Padre Pio, but a tangible weapon and a bridge. In an entry dated March 1957, Dr. Festa wrote that Padre Pio described being spiritually transported during his morning prayers to a place he called the Garden of Supplications. In this spiritual landscape, every rosary prayed with true sincerity manifested as a flowering plant. The fruits of these plants were the actual graces that God then distributed to those for whom the prayers were offered. The saint explained that even a distracted rosary, if offered with a sincere heart, held more power to move the heavens than the most eloquent worldly speech. Perhaps the most staggering testimony came from Father Pellegrino Funicelli, who spent countless hours in prayer alongside the Saint of Pietrelcina. In a letter written years after the saint's passing, he recounted a winter night while they were praying the rosary together in the deserted, silent church. The air was cold, but the atmosphere was heavy with a presence that felt like static electricity. Suddenly, Padre Pio stopped at the third joyful mystery. His eyes became fixed on a specific point above the altar, and he began to weep with an intensity that Father Pellegrino had never witnessed before. When the ecstasy finally subsided, Padre Pio explained that he had not merely been thinking about the Nativity. He had witnessed the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem as a present reality. It does not happen as a scene of the past, he explained, but as something that is renewed every time someone prays that mystery with true devotion. I saw the Virgin Mary, eternally young and radiant, receiving every Ave Maria as if it were the original greeting of the angel Gabriel, repeating itself without end through the centuries. He told Pellegrino that the Rosary is a spiritual time machine, allowing the soul to be physically and spiritually present at the foot of the cross or at the entrance of the empty tomb. Padre Pio elaborated that when we meditate on the crucifixion, we are not just spectators of a historical execution. Spiritually, we are placed at the foot of the cross alongside Mary and John. Every Ave Maria, whispered by a believer on earth, acts as a drop of soothing balm upon the wounds of Christ. He described seeing the Savior look down from the cross with the same look of infinite love he gave his mother, directed toward the person holding the beads in the present day. When it came to the glorious mysteries, Padre Pio revealed they held a specific, almost mechanical power for the souls in purgatory. He described seeing how, when a person meditates on the resurrection, a literal ray of golden light pierces the gray barriers of the purifying state, providing an immediate cooling relief to those suffering there. The light of the resurrection, he said, transcends the barriers of time and space to illuminate those places of waiting. This cosmic connection was further confirmed by Brother Bill Martin, an American friar who visited the saint in his final years. In July 1967, during a hot afternoon in the friary, The bill was accompanying the saint when the atmosphere in the room shifted. Padre Pio became rigid, his gaze locked on a corner of the cell. While his fingers continued to rhythmically move the beads, his face was a mask of compassion and sorrow. After several minutes, he began to cry silently. When he finally spoke, his voice was cracked with emotion. "Brother," he said to Bill, "I have just seen the soul of a man who died this morning in America. His family is gathered, praying the rosary for him at this very moment. I saw every Ave Maria becoming a rung on a ladder, helping him rise from the darkness toward the light." He explained that the rosary creates a real communion between the living and the dead, a network of light that connects the church on earth with the church in heaven and the church in Purgatory. This experience left an indelible mark on Brother Bill, who realized that the physical distance between the person praying and the soul being prayed for was completely irrelevant in the eyes of God. Padre Pio shared another secret with him that day, a revelation about the very beginning of one's journey with the beads. He told Bill that the moment a person decides to pick up a rosary and pray it for the first time in their life, a specific shift occurs in the spiritual realm. According to the saint, the Blessed Virgin Mary immediately dispatches a special angel from the celestial choir to accompany that person for the remainder of their earthly existence. This was not the standard guardian angel, but a specific angel of the crown, whose sole purpose was to gather the prayers of the rosary and ensure they reach the throne of God like fragrant, rising incense. This angel would whisper the words of the Ave Maria back to the devotee during times of extreme temptation or spiritual dryness, acting as a supernatural reinforcement when the soul felt too weak to continue its pilgrimage. One of the most heart-wrenching and consoling revelations Padre Pio ever shared concerned the power of a mother's prayer. Mary Pyle, an American woman who gave up a life of luxury to live near the friar and become his spiritual daughter, witnessed this firsthand. She had been distraught over her son, who had wandered far from the faith and lived a life of total indifference to the divine. One afternoon, while Padre Pio was holding Mary's own rosary in his wounded hands, he fell into a deep silence. His eyes filled with a light that seemed to come from another world, and a gentle smile played on his lips. When he returned to himself, he took Mary's hands in his and told her that he had seen her son in a distant city. He described how the young man was surrounded by a literal wall of light. "Every rosary you have prayed for him during these long years of wandering," Padre Pio explained, "has been transformed into a celestial guardian. He does not see them, and he does not feel them yet, but they are preventing his total ruin." He told her that a mother's rosary creates an invisible web of grace. Even if a child appears deaf to the voice of God or the advice of their parents, the Ave Marias act as seeds buried deep in the frozen soil of the heart. The saint assured her that while the world might see a lost cause, the spiritual reality was that of a garden waiting for the spring. "The day will come," he promised, "when these seeds will all bloom at once, and the sheer weight of that grace will pull him back to the Father's house." True to the saint's vision, only 3 months later, the son experienced a sudden and radical conversion that lacked any worldly explanation, leading him to a life of profound penance and service. Father Agostino Daniele, who served as Padre Pio's confessor and confidant for decades, also documented the intrinsic link between the rosary and the holy sacrifice of the Mass. He recalled a morning when the saint was celebrating Mass and suddenly became motionless after the consecration. So the entire congregation watched in a hushed, sacred silence as Padre Pio stared at the host with tears streaming into his beard. Later, in the privacy of the sacristy, he confessed to Agostino that he had seen the prayers of the faithful from all over the world converging upon the altar. He saw the Ave Marias of the simple and the poor, forming a physical crown of light around the body of Christ. He explained that the Rosary and the Eucharist are the two lungs of the soul. One cannot breathe fully without the other. The Rosary prepares the heart to receive the Lord, and the Eucharist gives the soul the strength to live out the mysteries meditated upon in the prayer. As Padre Pio entered his final years, the veil between his earthly life and the spiritual world seemed to thin until it was almost transparent. His physical body was a shell of its former self, racked by arthritis and the persistent burden of the stigmata, yet his spiritual vigor only intensified. Dr. Andrea Cardone, who was tasked with monitoring the saint's failing health, noticed that the Rosary was the only thing that could still bring a flush of color to the friar's pale face. Just days before his passing in September 1968, the doctor witnessed a scene that would serve as the final seal on the saint's Marian devotion. The saint was sitting in his armchair, his breath coming in shallow gasps, yet his fingers were working the wooden beads with a rhythmic mechanical precision. He slipped into an ecstasy that lasted nearly an hour, on a state so profound that the doctor could not find a pulse. When Padre Pio finally returned to his senses, he whispered to Dr. Cardone that he had been shown the final destination of his long journey. "Doctor," he said with a voice that sounded like wind through dry leaves, "I have seen the garden that is prepared for those who love the Mother of God. It is a place where the air itself is made of the music of the Ave Maria. I saw roses there, millions of them, and I realized that each one was a rosary I had prayed while on this earth. But they were not just my roses. I saw the roses of my spiritual children, and they were all intertwined, forming a single massive bower of protection and beauty." He revealed that even after his death, the Rosary would remain the telephone through which his followers could reach him. He promised that for every soul who prayed the Rosary in his memory, he would stand at the gates of paradise to welcome them personally. This final vision emphasized that the Rosary was not a solitary act, but a communal one that bridged the gap between the church militant and the church triumphant. It was a testament to the idea that no prayer is ever lost. Instead, every bead moved in faith adds to a spiritual treasury that benefits the entire human race. The legacy of these revelations began to spread like wildfire after his death. Stories emerged from all over the globe, from the skyscrapers of New York to the rural villages of Africa, of people who felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to pray the Rosary at the very moment they were facing a life-threatening crisis. Many reported feeling a presence, often described as a scent of fresh roses or a sense of profound peace, which Padre Pio had always associated with the intercession of the Virgin Mary. One documented account from a soldier in the Vietnam War described how, while pinned down in a rice paddy, he began to recite the Rosary he had received as a child. He spoke of seeing a luminous path through the jungle that led his squad to safety, a path that mirrored the golden staircase Padre Pio had described to Brother Rafaele decades earlier. Padre Pio's teachings redefined the Rosary for the modern age. He taught that it was not a burden of repetitive words, but a ladder of light. He often told his followers that the Rosary is the weapon for these times, but he clarified that it was a weapon of love, not of destruction. It was a tool to dismantle the walls of hatred in the human heart and to build bridges across the chasms of despair. He saw it as a spiritual umbilical cord that kept the soul nourished by the grace of God, even when the world around it was starving for truth and meaning. The impact on the Church was profound. His visions encouraged a resurgence in the meditation of the mysteries, moving the practice away from a mechanical recitation toward a deep, contemplative encounter with the life of Christ. He showed that through the Rosary, the simplest layperson could reach the same heights of mystical union as the greatest saints. By the time of his canonization, the stories of his Rosary visions had become a cornerstone of modern Catholic spirituality, proving that in a world increasingly dominated by noise and technology, the quiet clicking of wooden beads still held the power to move the hand of God. The profound nature of Padre Pio's relationship with the Rosary was perhaps best summarized by his own daily habit, which bordered on the miraculous. It was reported that he often prayed dozens, sometimes even over 100 full rosaries in a single 24-hour period. When asked by his astonished superiors at how he found the time, he would simply smile and say that for God, time is an ocean, not a narrow stream. He lived in a perpetual state of meditation, his fingers constantly moving beneath his habit, even while he was eating, walking, or listening to confessions. He viewed the beads as a spiritual anchor that kept him grounded in the presence of God, while his soul navigated the turbulent waters of the thousands of people who flocked to him for healing and guidance. He once told a group of pilgrims that the Rosary is the summation of the Gospel, a way for the uneducated and the scholar alike to enter the very heart of the Holy Trinity. He described how, during the sorrowful mysteries, he could feel the weight of the cross on his own shoulders, a physical sensation that mirrored his stigmata. He saw that when a person prays these mysteries, they are actually helping Christ carry the sins of the world in that very moment. It was not a memory of an old event. It was a participation in an eternal sacrifice. He warned that to pray the Rosary without meditating on the mysteries was like having a body without a soul. The words are the flesh, but the meditation is the spirit that gives it life. As the decades passed after his departure from this world, the Rosary of Padre Pio became a global phenomenon. In countless hospitals, the dying find peace clutching the beads, remembering his promise that the Ave Maria would be their escort. In homes where families are fractured by modern pressures, the invisible web of grace he described to Mary Pyle continues to mend what is broken. The saints' revelations taught the world that the Rosary is not a relic of the past, but a living, breathing force of nature. He demonstrated that every time a person says, "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners," the entire court of heaven stands at attention, and the gates of purgatory swing open just a little wider to release those who have been waiting for that specific drop of spiritual water. Ultimately, the story of Padre Pio and the Rosary is a story of hope. It is the assurance that we are never alone in our struggles, that our prayers have a tangible, luminous form in the eyes of God, and that the Blessed Mother is constantly weaving our simple petitions into crowns of eternal glory. The Saint of Pietrelcina left behind a roadmap for the soul, showing that the path to heaven is paved with the beads of the Rosary. He proved that this humble prayer is the key that unlocks the treasury of divine mercy, a golden chain that binds the heart of man to the heart of God, and a light that no darkness in this world or the next can ever fully extinguish. When we hold the Rosary, we are holding the very hand of the Mother of God, walking toward a kingdom where every prayer is a rose that never fades.